All right, welcome back to the channel. So I had to do a video about this. ESPN with Andre Ward, Timothy Bradley, and Mark Kriegel refer to black fighters being discriminated against and southpaws being discriminated against in boxing. They also speak on the George Floyd thing very briefly in the beginning of the telecast, but the tone was, from my ears and eyes, significantly different than it usually is. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So ESPN, in the form of Andre Ward, Tim Bradley, and Mark Kriegel, finally recognized that there is serious issues with racism in boxing. Now, should that surprise somebody that understands what the R word is? No, they should not. If there is problems between, if there is systemic or consistent interrelation problems between people that have color in their skin and people that do not, right? You would know that in any area that they interact with one another, that the same dynamic is going to exist because it is brought in there with them. If there are systems in place where that treat people differently because they have one has color in their skin and the other does not. And boxing is uses those systems or participates in those systems as well. Then the effects of racism in those systems will affect the sport of boxing. Okay, and by I mean hiring, firing, recognition of people's accomplishments, the perception that something is more valuable than one thing is more valuable than something else. All of those things are out there in every other area of human activity. But for some reason, people believe or behave as if up until yesterday, before this break from boxing, they acted as if it did not exist whatsoever, and then boxing somehow existed in a vacuum. Famous for this lately is the moronic commentator over there from Showtime Sports, Pauli Malignaggi, who claimed that racism does not exist. It is the figment of the imagination of black people. And if black people just acted like they were supposed to act, said the things that make European Americans happy, frame their problems in a way that European Americans can respond to and would be receptive to, then all of their problems should go away. So guys like Pauli Malignaggi see racial issues and they put them firmly on the head of the person who is not in his group, right? That's Pauli Malignaggi is the epitome of racist boxing commentators. I mean, he's the one I know it. He's the one that I believe is. Seriously. Everybody else I have a feeling about, but over the last couple of weeks, the things that he was saying over there on his page before he got zipped up, he was just, he's way over the line, feeling himself way too much. So it was refreshing to hear Mark Kriegel and Tim Bradley and Andre Ward speak about it in a way that it was like, okay, that makes sense. And they did it naturally. They mentioned it in a scenario where it was applicable. And let me tell you what it was. He said Shakur Stevenson, when they talked about the future of Shakur Stevenson and him getting in the fight and getting fights with the other great champions or the other champions he talked about, they didn't speak about Gary Russell Jr., which I think was, hey, man, that's who he needs to be fighting. That kid wants to step up and be great. He needs to fight Gary Russell Jr. because he will learn a lot in a fight with Gary Russell Jr. But they mentioned getting a fight with Josh Warrington, moving up and being able to win championships, maybe all the way up to 147 pounds. But they said, hey, he's got a couple marks against him. He's a black, slick southpaw. Now, what does that mean? Well, first, he's being a black fighter, you get it. But he said also a southpaw. and a slick fighter. Now, who does that sound like to you? Dun, 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 dun. Let the clock tick. Southpaw, slick fighter, excellent fighter, was blackballed in boxing. That, my friend, is Guillermo Rigondeaux. That, my friend, is Luis Ortiz. That, my friend, if it was not for Al Heyman, definitely would have been Erislandy Lara. These fighters that present things that they're all of those. When you say black southpaw, you're talking about two categories that people are hesitant to give a fight to. Number one, the southpaw, because it's very awkward and people are used to fighting orthodox fighters. Many people consider on an average situation that if you have a southpaw and an orthodox person, that the southpaw is going to have an advantage because he's used to fighting southpaws. And southpaw is going to have an advantage because he's used to fighting orthodox. 9 out of 10 fighters or 19 out of 20 fighters or probably more than that are right-handed. So they immediately like, oh no, because our fighter can really look bad against that. So we don't want to give him the opportunity. Also, in America, more so than just being southpaw, he is extremely good and extremely athletic and more than likely going to run through just off that. Shakur Stevenson don't even have to be a southpaw to mop Josh Warrington. He'll mop. He could probably switch to orthodox and whoop Josh Warrington. So all of those reasons, right? Remember what Abel Sanchez said? Black fighters don't sell, right? Black fighters don't sell. That's what Bob Arum said. The guy that put on the card that Mark Kragel, Tim Bradley, and Andre Ward were fighting on said, hey, black fighters don't sell, right? Oh, and for people west of, for his menu is for west of the Mississippi, Mexican fighters. East of the Mississippi Rider, mixture of a few black fighters and Eastern European fighters, because they figured that if you could find a really successful, a really good European fighter, that he is going to be more popular than the black fighter. So because of racism, isn't that interesting? You would almost blame the fact that you do not sell black fighters based on the fact that people might not want to see black fighters. That's what I think it is. When they say black fighters don't sell, I think that they really mean they don't want to sell black fighters. But, there's all kind of other topics that we can talk about related to this, where this exists in the sport of boxing. But the thing that was really not odd about it was the fact that they just threw things in there and they didn't have a producer over them that would prevent them from saying it. And I think my personal opinion is I think that that's going to make boxing much better, man, because if the announcers can say it, that makes it that much harder for the promoters and the fighters to pull it off. Right. But what they were doing before was they wouldn't say it and they could couch it behind any other type of reason that might sound somewhat logical. Now, just because something is logical does not mean that it is right. And just because something is logical doesn't mean that there's not another equally logical explanation for it that might actually, you might be able to have some proof to back up. So all in all, I'm happy with what I saw. I really appreciated the way they went about it. And also the fact that they did not have an audience there and the fact that they were in different places, I don't think affected the quality of that broadcast much at all. Like maybe in the eyes of maybe a producer or somebody that is really looking at all of the different things that they could do in the show, usually that they don't do it, that they couldn't do without the crowd and without the close contact. But last night, that was just a boxing match and all you got to see was boxing, right? And the boxing looked just as good as it did with the crowd there, with the camera angle and all that. So, hey man, I was very, very happy with it. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. I appreciate that at least, they were able to have that that type of environment where usually they would want to stay as far away from those type of topics as they possibly could. Because imagine, like, YouTube doesn't really even like you talking about it in videos, so small videos. So, promote their sponsors and things like that would not like that, don't usually like that in big broadcasts. But since the sponsors are out there selling the same product and doing the same thing, hey man, they say, hey, you can't block it during the commentary. So it was nice to see. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.